Rebecca Galli, welcome to the Bookaholic podcast.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yes, glad to have you here. And I'm really glad to have you as one of my first guests of 2025 because I think your message is going to resonate with everyone. And that is so important to hear what you have to say and how you have to handle it. I also feel like, well, personally, I know a lot of people who are facing challenges right now, including myself. My one son lives in LA. He is challenged by the fires. My youngest son was a victim of Hurricane Helene, and so was I to a little degree. But other than that, and personally, a lot of people are with challenges. And a lot of people feel like, the upcoming government, that's a challenge. So there's a lot of uncertainty. There's a lot going on that people are facing a lot of challenges. But I do believe what you have written and you're going to say to us today is going to be very, very important.
My
So
goodness, what a setup. Thank you. I hope I deliver.
you will. Just the matter of the fact that you wrote this book and of the all the things that you write about. So let's get into it and let's talk about Rebecca. And when I read your bio, I was like, oh my gosh, this woman has had it hard, a tough, tough life. And I'm going to read out some of the things that have happened to you. So at the age of 17, your brother died. Then you had a son with a degenerative disease, and he subsequently died, correct?
That's right. Age 15.
You at age 15. You have a daughter who suffers from autism.
Yes.
You are divorced,
Yes.
and 17 or 18 days after you were divorced, or 9 days, I think I read somewhere, you became paralyzed after your divorce.
That's right.
I'm breathing out for you. That's a lot. That's enough that some people in this life would have committed suicide. Some people in this life would have been so mentally unstable that they would not be able to heal ever again. There's a lot in there. And people are going to want to know, how on earth did you make it through? Okay, so your brother passed away when he was 17. What happened with him?
He was in a water skiing accident. So he was skiing and saw someone on the beach and was waving at him and not particularly paying attention where he was going. And he hit
Mhm,
part of a pier and was
mhm,
in a coma for 9 days
mhm.
and died. So
Wow, okay. And your son,
my
what
son,
disease?
he had he had seizures and a degenerative disease, and so
Mhm,
although his death was tragic, it was from complications from that. He just had a pneumonia that couldn't be corrected, and so he passed away at age 15.
right. And your daughter, she has autism. So there's a lot of levels to autism. How is she faring now?
She's doing very well, and she's in a group home and has a day program that gets her out and about in the community. I get to see her periodically. I don't live too far away, and she's doing the best she can. She can't read
Mhm,
or write or ever be left alone,
mhm,
but is physically fit and able to be out in the community and engage. She has very limited communication skills. So
mhm.
have good people surrounding her, and that's part of the way that I think we get through these things is we make sure we have good support systems.
Most definitely, most definitely. And that's good to hear that she is safe, that she is progressing in her own way by getting out and engaging with the community, and that you get to see her. So that's good. And your paralysis, how did that all come about?
Well, I went to bed. I had had the flu for a little bit, and then went
Mhm,
into the to see the doctor, and he was treating me for pneumonia, actually. And this is back in 1997, coming on 28 years.
mhm,
And so I went to bed, and I hadn't been feeling great. Well, I woke up in the middle of the night, and I had these shooting pains in my legs, all the
mm,
way up my back. And at that time, you could call the doctor on call, and he would
okay.
get right to you. And he did. And he said, "Well, maybe you've got a potassium deficiency. Why don't you have some
Mhm,
orange juice?" And for whatever reason, it's such a strange thing. But I felt like, you know what? I'm had an orange juice. I'm going to go ahead and pay the mortgage just because I don't know. I felt like I needed to do that.
right.
So, wrote the check, stamped it, went upstairs, and the pains increased and increased. And in 6 hours, I was paralyzed from my waist down.
Oh my
So
goodness.
took them
And
a
where did
while.
they say this came from? It came from the pneumonia?
Well, the diagnosis is transverse myelitis, which trans
Mhm,
means across. Myelitis is inflammation, so it's an inflammation of the spinal cord. It took a while to figure out exactly what was going on. They thought maybe it was Guillain-Barré or, another something else, Lou Gehrig's. They couldn't figure it out, and then
mhm,
when they finally did, they just watched the level of sensation um, grow. They said, it has to kind of run its course. So they didn't know if I was
right.
going to be a paraplegic, a quadriplegic,
Oh my
but it stopped right at my belly,
mhm,
right back. So there's no cause for that particularly. There's not, and there's no cure for that particularly. They do know that in one third of the cases, people recover fully. In
mhm.
another third of the cases, people recover partially. But in
Oh,
that last third, there's no recovery at all. So I went into that with a lot of hope.
mhm.
After my daughter, after my brother, my daughter, my son, maybe I would I
Right,
I
right.
would come out on the best side
It
of
was
that, right?
right, it was your time. It was your time for, a reprieve, definitely.
So,
I
but
mean, that's
after
how
about
we all think.
yeah, right, I'm due,
Mhm,
right? Um, but after about 19 months, and my kids at that time in my life were 3, 4, 6, and 9, and so they
mm,
were young. And after about 19 months, after I one psychologist that had dealt with me when in my son's situation, Matthew's
mhm,
situation, had said, when you're dealing with uncertainty, pursue parallel paths. In other words, on the one hand, when everything works out, what will life look like, and have activities based on that. And on the other
mm,
side, if they don't work out, what would life look like
right,
that? And so with me, I had was doing all kinds of therapy 3 times a week, going in and trying to stand and seeing if I could bear weight. And after about 19 months, I said, you know what? I think I need to accept this life as being a paraplegic, and learn how to, get in and out of my house easier, and permanent
right,
ramps, and get
right,
a van that could help me get in the car. And
right,
but it took me a long time to accept it. But
right.
I have, and that's the
And I can see that. I can
yeah.
see that it would take a person a long time to accept that, so I totally understand. And I left out your divorce, and
Yes.
that was because of what was the cause?
Well, when you have one special needs child, that is a strain on a marriage. When you have two, It really is, and we just weren't good for each other in that time of our life, but we've maintained a friendship, a strong friendship, and amazing support for my kids and for me.
Mhm,
So
mhm.
we went into again, we went into our shrink and said, I told him, I said, I either want an amazing marriage or an amazing divorce, but
Right,
I want to work on this so that we are good co-parents minimally.
right.
And if friendship comes from that and can be maintained from that, then what a great thing that would be for both of us.
Right, exactly. And that's fair enough, I say in your particular situation. So now that we have painted the picture for everyone about all the things that you've gone through, and then, in life interspersed, there's the other little things such as other people important in your life that have passed away, probably friends, family, other family, etc. The strife of working, etc. So let's talk about how you got through. We have a lot of different people that listen to this podcast or watch this YouTube channel. Some are Christian people, believers, if you will. Some are not. Some depend on the tarot. Some depend on, all kinds of things, manifestation, and all of these different things. What set you on the path of this tremendous positivity? How did you get there? Because a lot of people would have given up.
Yeah, and I have my days. It's an up and down journey, that's for sure. But
Right.
I think I have to credit my parents for providing a positive environment. And the more I speak and relate to other people, I realize not everybody has that. And I think it
Right.
was a real gift for me that I probably took for granted until I had to use it so regularly, and it's just like it came natural to look for the positive because my parents did that. My
Mhm.
dad was a big believer in what's planned is possible. So we had a lot of plans, a lot of goals, and my mom was, get the ducks in a row. So,
Right.
to be organized about things.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
when I wrote my first book and really put everything in a sequential order and started looking back on like where does the strength come from,
Mhm.
I watched my parents um, go through the grief process of their only son. you know
Right.
uh, Boris was their 17-year-old, and he was that kid that was president of student council, active in church life, wanted to become a
Mhm.
lawyer, all these kinds of things. He was that kid. And
Right.
to watch my father grieve that and my mom grieve that, they did it in very different ways. And my
Right.
father was a minister and did it very publicly, taking everything that he lost and being able to speak about it openly, and
Right.
became a noted lecturer on grief. My mother joined support groups where she became a leader in it was parents that had lost children. Um,
Mhm.
but my sister, who was 4 years younger, had a real tough time with it and really wanted to be with my brother. And so
Mm.
they had to get counseling for her. Uh,
Mhm.
I was a junior in college and really leaned into my college girlfriends to just keep me moving. So
Right. Right.
it taught me a lot about how different we are when it comes to grief and handling things.
Yes, 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 most definitely. Everybody views grief or problems in a different way, and everyone needs a different path to healing. And that was your book. Was that the Rethinking Possible, a
Yes,
memoir of resilience that you did in 2017?
that's right. Yes.
Okay, okay, okay. And you also on your website, you write about love, loss, and healing on your website. Rebecca Galli .com.
Yes, it's that BeckyGalli.com is my website, and uh, I kind of backed into writing unexpectedly.
Mhm.
When I was first paralyzed, this was 1997. Internet was just becoming popular. Email
Yep.
was becoming popular,
Yep.
and I got an email, rare back then, from a college, actually a high school friend that found out about my paralysis and was like, "Is that you?" And because of that email, and I was like, I don't
Mhm.
even who I am, because was I going to be paralyzed? Was I going to recover? Whatever. But I had a guy that knew me when and said, "Who are you now?" So I took him through, my marriage, my kids, my divorce, and the paralysis, and started telling him the stories of what it was like to be paralyzed and all
Mhm.
parent and the challenges I had. And so I'd written a story I'd sent to him about playing soccer from the wheelchair with my then 4-year-old son, Peter.
Right.
And he said, this is a great story. And he sent it to his friends and family. And I sent it to my friends and parents. And this is before blogs or social media or anything.
Right.
So you copied and pasted an email address to the
Right.
story. And somebody said, you know what? I think you should publish that in the newspaper. And so I got an op-ed piece in Baltimore Sun was published,
Mhm.
and because of that piece, I wrote a few more op-ed pieces, and then I did a regular column called "From Where I Sit" for a
Mhm.
local weekly for 12 years, and then the book came from that. So Rethinking Possible, first of all, and then this latest one, that Morning Fuel, that came out just in October. So it was one of those things. I was writing to connect to people, to kind of share my story, because I was used to being a sales and marketing gal, and then all of a
Right.
sudden just kind of had my feet taken out from under me and had to use my
Right.
my wheels, and also, the communication that we had available through the internet, which was, if it had to be paralyzed, it was a great time. At least we
Right.
could
Right.
connect with each other that way. So
Right. Exactly.
that's kind of how I got into writing. And now I do something called Thoughtful Thursdays, where I try to um, send out a little email that describes what has inspired me that week to say positive. And I
Mhm. Mhm.
kind of find if we look for that, we'll find it. We can
Right.
find. Sometimes we have to look at it for it harder than other times, but it's a
Yes.
worthwhile pursuit.
Well, now let's go ahead and dive into the book that you've just written, and it's called Morning Fuel. And it's daily inspirations to stretch your mind before you start your day. Now, through all that you've been through, uh, what's the tone of this book? We know it's positive, but just to let people know, there is no magic to this. What? How would you describe it? People need to
Well,
be based in reality, for one. I'm saying. I'm saying. Correct me if I'm wrong.
no, absolutely. That's my number one thing, is you got to be honest. If it
Mhm.
hurts, say ouch. We can't
Mhm.
deny those feelings. And I think it's really important to be honest about our situation. We can
Right.
choose, though, however, how we look at it. You know,
Yes.
we can say it's a tough day, but it's just a tough day.
Right.
It's not a tomorrow. It's a tough right now, and to
Right.
embrace that moment, not deny it. Um, but I think that the tone of the book is stretching your mind before starting your day. But every
Mhm.
entry in here, and a lot of these were based on the um, the the columns that I've written through the years. So
Yes. Okay.
so the ones that are included in here either are going to inspire, encourage, or make you think. And
Mm.
so if they didn't meet that criteria of either
Mhm.
inspiring or encouraging or make you think, then they're not in here.
Right.
So
Right.
that's what I'm hoping, and that's what the readers are telling me now, they're getting from that. They enjoy it. Some of them are very short, only a couple paragraphs, another 1 or 2 days, but at the 1 or 2 pages. But at the end of each day, there are some questions, some reflection questions. Like you get a story, and then I try to pull out a thread for you to think about and apply to your life.
Mm, okay. So let me make sure that I'm describing it correctly. So it's a daily read, and you'll read it in the morning, and then in the evening you should go back to it and ask yourself, see the questions that you have.
You can use it anyway. I named it morning fuel, but the truth
Right.
is you can read it anytime you need a little jolt. You know,
Right.
anytime you need to pick me up. I've had people that say they read it and then they just keep reading because they're curious about something and they might skip a day or two or come back. Have people that
Mm-hmm.
journal after the entry, the questions, they like to journal through it and kind of write down
Mm-hmm.
how they're feeling that day or how they're reacting to that question. So
Right.
it's yeah, a lot of different ways to use it. I've had a minister friend reached out to me and said he was going to use one of the stories as a sermon illustration. I've had
Mm-hmm.
someone tell me they read it kind of like a book of poetry that you just kind of graze when you need um,
Right.
a little something. And then I've had somebody else that's like it's a tarot card reader. It's like just pick one and read it.
Right.
See how it speaks to me. I was like, okay, whatever works for you.
Whatever works for whomever. Well, I was speaking to someone yesterday and they were a little bit down. And I told them one of the things is that a lot of people, especially we Americans, we Americans are like, oh, let's fight through this thing. We're strong, we're tough Americans. And, a lot of people don't want to like actually sit in the pain. I'm not talking about for all time's sake, but you need to sit in the pain to realize where you are, because you won't know joy or real joy until you sit in this pain and analyze it. And then when joy comes along, then you're like, oh, it's totally recognizable. So how would you tell a person to be honest and be in reality and sit in that pain? What should you do while you're sitting in that pain? And then what would be your next step?
So I love that. You got to feel the feeling, you got to say the ouch. And people
Mhm.
do that differently. I like to write it down. I keep a journal. And so I would write down what all's coming up with that pain. Some people need to process it and talk with someone else to just, and I've said to some of my girlfriends, I just need your brain for a minute. I don't need you
Mhm.
to fix anything. I just need you to listen. Because sometimes I think, especially us positive folks, try to help people see the sunny side. And sometimes
Yeah,
you just need to listen and let that dark side acknowledge, oh, that is a lot, you know?
exactly.
It's a
Exactly.
lot. And I can
Right.
understand how you're feeling this way and not try to fix it all the time or make it discount it by looking at a positive side.
Right.
So,
Right.
but for me, I try to limit that. It's like, okay, I can be in this pit, I call them pity pits, I can feel sorry for myself for 30 minutes, or maybe 15 minutes, or,
Mhm.
I've just put a timer on it and
Mhm.
say, you got to
Mhm.
come out of this. And for example, when I was writing the first book and I had to relive all of these losses, I would tell my sister, I'm going to write about, for our brother, our forest death today. So this is going to be hard. I know it's going to be hard. I'm going to have to get down in
Mhm.
that pit so those honest feelings can come through in my writing.
Right.
So, but I want to touch base with you at the end of the day. So it's like I've got a beginning and an end. Just make sure I come out of it. you
Right,
know,
exactly, exactly. I love that because, my sister says something similar to that. Cry for a day,
Mm.
go ahead and cry for that whole day, be all enthralled, whatever you gotta do, thrash, spin around, cry for a day, but then, you gotta come out of that and start making some positive steps. It's not going to be healed in a day,
Right.
but you can't wallow forever and ever and ever. Well, Rebecca, I am so happy that you wrote this book. You are very inspiring and encouraging. You did not know this is what you were going to be doing for people in life. And so that was quite unexpected. But I'm just so glad that you came out of it to the other side. And it takes work. You've mentioned totally therapist in this interview. There's no magic formulas, but there is another side of pain, and it can be hope and resilience and healing. Rebecca, thank you so much for joining the Bookaholic podcast. And we will have all of your books in the podcast show notes and in the video description box below.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure to be with you.
Oh, I loved it. I loved it. Thank you so much.
Welcome.